It's me, Laura Ann Spagna, with you today to chat briefly about the upcoming Lionsgate portal and what's going on Earth at this time. It's a very challenging time, and it does seem to be that humanity has chosen a more challenging route in the evolutionary process known as Ascension. We can see this pattern has been developing clearly for a long time. Those of us who are not new to the Ascension journey understand this is not a recent phenomena, but one in some ways that has been almost expected, because the overall choice to change is one that humanity is and has been resisting. Interestingly, astrologically speaking, the North and South Node right now, which are the directional points for humanity's evolution, these nodes are marked astrologically, but they represent our karma and dharma, the path that we are taking. They are in the two signs that are most resistant to change, Taurus and Scorpio. North Node in Taurus, South Node in Scorpio. And right now at this time we have three major planets in retrograde, including the astrological planet Pluto, the planet Saturn, and now Jupiter. And these planets are asking us to review where we have not changed or where we have been resistant to change. So we are having an opportunity to look at the world right now, and we are recognizing the things that seem to be perhaps wrong, for lack of a better term, are the things we have not changed within ourselves and in our world. And I wanted to take a moment, if I could, to sort of help us to understand why this Lionsgate portal overall is so significant, so relevant, really, to the change that we are being asked to make. So, for example, and before I even say any of that, let me just reinforce what I've said so many times, is that the portal windows such as this one of Lionsgate, which is 8/8, August 8th, happens every August on August 8th. The portal's already open. It starts opening at the onset of the Leo season, astrologically, which happens typically on the 21st of July, when the astrological sign shifts to Leo. The portal continues to open, especially on August 1st and the first week of August, and reaches its peak on August 8th, the Lion's Gate, and then slowly weans off through the balance of the month of August, and particularly kind of closes and completes during the last week of August as we shift from Leo into Virgo, astrologically speaking. And we know this particular portal is always one of those agreed upon Starseed connection calls, where basically the Starseeds and the Indigo family tribes hear the call, recognize the call for unity on these portal dates, and in particular this one upcoming, the Lionsgate. And so what's happening is that this Lionsgate is going to be a major shifting, in a sense, for the balance of the year. And what we're going to witness won't be different. Those choosing an ascension journey, aligning more and more with the light, will continue to find our experiences to be more and more effortless, more and more graceful, more and more easy, more and more benevolent, not without its challenges, of course, but overall, that we're riding a different wave than those who have not chosen to make change. Internal change is the change we're talking about. We're talking about the change that requires, from a Taurus North Node and a Scorpio South Node perspective, the change is an internal change in terms of transforming our own shadow and trauma into more light and the quality, the divine virtues, the divine templates of who we really are. That's what this directional is essentially asking us to do. And for those who are not changing, of course, the balance of this year could potentially find itself very challenging for them as an effort to embrace more change. For those of us who are willingly doing the transformational work, the change is always easier, and the outcome, the experiences that we have are almost always more graceful and more benevolent. So, but the choice is ours nonetheless to make these change. Now, I want to address some of the kinds of experiences that we're looking at because I think that a lot of times people don't always realize that the traumas that we're carrying, which are, you know, in our unconscious and certainly sort of coded into our DNA, scripted unconsciously into our DNA and coded, we don't always realize that the entire world, as we perceive it and experience it, is a reflection of that. And we tend to believe that our experience is the same or very similar to what everybody else is experiencing. But nothing could be further from the truth. Because in reality, all of reality is a reflection of each individual. So each individual's holographic experience is a reflection of their unique consciousness and their energetic vibration in what I call the quantum soup that is their morphogenetic field. So your field of light that reflects in the physical world is a reflection of what is in you, meaning each and every one of us. And so for this reason, it is so important, more than ever now, to be clearing, healing, and resolving the unconscious traumas, the wounds, the suffering, and the pain that we have carried from lifetime to lifetime, which is scripted into our DNA. And it's just coded into the first two strands. And some of these kinds of things that we oftentimes don't always realize are so unconscious to us. So one of my favorite ones that I like to refer to is the false sky god. And that's this idea that this god is somewhere up in the sky, separate from us, and rewarding the good and punishing the bad and judging and condemning those who are not, you know, behaving in accordance with its will. And while that as a parable is not necessarily so entirely untrue, in reality, it is the energy of consciousness that creates this experience. And so if someone is carrying within them some form of corrupted spiritual programming, corrupted meaning untrue or inaccurate or out of vibrational harmony with source truth, source, creator, God, the divine, infinite I am, all that is, however we reference and identify that source, then that will show up in the field around, and it will show up as a lack of faith, a sense of powerlessness, a feeling of being abandoned by God, a rejection of God. Certainly people who worship science as their religion and distrust any form of spirituality, that is a form of that, for example. So it could show up as a false sky god programming. Another way sometimes it shows up slightly different is crucifixion implants, which may have been impressed upon you in this or some other lifetime, most likely some parallel universe or parallel existence, you see, where maybe you were involved somehow in spiritual work that you believed in, or for whatever, somehow it may have been corrupted or not, and you may have been crucified. For lots of other lifetimes, spiritual leaders and teachers and healers were witches, of course, crucified and or condemned and or burned at the stake. And you could be carrying such a trauma as a crucifixion implant or a spiritual, like what we call an insert or trauma, scripted into your DNA. And so without knowing it, you're walking around in this lifetime believing that God's not taking care of you, or the universe doesn't have your back, or you're not being supported, or you unconsciously feel powerless over circumstances or situations, Or perhaps maybe you're just afraid to go to any kind of courtroom, or whatever it might be, however it might play out. It's a kind of fear energetically that affects us unconsciously when it's scripted into the DNA and hasn't been resolved. Another really good example of these kinds of unconscious scripts, for example, could be any form of what we call Armageddon software or end-of-game scenario. So Armageddon software and end-of-game scenario programs are often, I need a little more light in here, hold on. Sorry, it got dark pretty quickly. Are often why you see people in the world urging you that you better stock up on food and stock up on water, because in their paradigm, water supply issues are really, that's what they see and perceive and believe and project into their future. Or they believe that the world is somehow coming to an end, or that we're going to be taken over by some kind of alien race, or that or that food shortages are going to happen, because they're running this Armageddon software, and that's what's scripted into their DNA, and they're projecting it into their reality, and they believe it's true for everyone. And they don't understand that in a parallel reality where people are not carrying that in their dormant DNA, they're not carrying that Armageddon programming or that end-of-game scenario. In that reality, there's limitless food, and store shelves are not running out, and there's plenty of water. And even though in this paradigm, maybe those people are aware it exists out there, it's not personally affecting them because they're not running that script in their dormant DNA. It's a great example. So it's very important to clear this stuff out from our unconscious. I'll give a few more examples, but I could go on with these for quite some time because, I mean, they're fascinating and I've been studying them for years and years. So another one, for example, is there's so many. You could do. There's some on all about sexual misery programs. Okay, so sexual misery programs, a good example of them. They can show up as sex trafficking, sex slavery. They can show up as pornography addiction, sex addictions of various kinds. And they can show up as inappropriate activities with minors or children. And we know that exists in the world. And we tend to, in the old paradigm, look at people like that and think that they're sick or they're demented or there's something wrong with them, or we judge them, criticize them. But what we don't realize is that they're running a script in their DNA unconsciously. They're carrying traumas energetically in their unconscious, not just a script, not DNA in the old paradigm way. It's that something's operating unconsciously in a similar way to, let's say you had a program on your computer that you didn't know was there, was slowing it down or making it automatically shut off or do something wrong, so to speak. It's the same concept. So that stuff can be cleared out spiritually, energetically healed and resolved so that that's not playing out in their storyline anymore. And if you personally are running such a program where maybe there's inappropriate sexual activities going on, maybe your spouse or your partner is inappropriate in some way with children, with animals, or maybe that's going on within your own family dynamic, that is resolvable energetically and spiritually and can be cleared out of the DNA. And it's not that you have to go through shock treatments or chemical therapies. It's a matter of spiritual and energetic healing and working with consciousness, with DNA, that these issues can be resolved fully, wholly, and completely. And of course, they have to be addressed in other parallel realities, including past lives, and they have to be addressed, of course, karmically, right? Which is, again, referencing that South Node in Scorpio is the shadow unconscious aspects of us that we have to let go of. So that's just another example of how something could play out. You know, there are other forms of emotional fracturing that humanity is responsible for healing and resolving. So what do I mean by emotional fracturing? It could be areas where we're just careless. We're careless with ourselves and with one another. Maybe we are careless with the animals and the way we treat them. We are careless. We don't express from the heart. Our hearts are closed or blocked down, and then that may result in some form of heart attack or heart imbalances or heart palpitations. Or maybe there's also in these emotional fracturing programs, there's sometimes deceit. Well, why does deceit show up in someone's life? Because they're carrying energy of deceit in their morphogenetic field. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means they carried it on either from their lineage or from their ancestry through their genetics or from some other past parallel lifetime. It's coded into the DNA so that it can be resolved, and it will show up in their reality to help them to become aware so that they can make these changes. These are the internal changes that are being asked of humanity at this time. These are just a few examples. Another good example is divide and conquer. So divide and conquer really played out a lot over the past few years, especially with the COVID agenda. As that COVID scenario played out and people chose, their side of the coin, what they believed about that, and it continued to play out. Another example of how divide and conquer played out. I mean, it's one of the most prevalent ones in our world with regard to the vax or the jab, where people stood on either side of that. It always shows up in the Western political system, by the way, Democrat, Republican, divide and conquer. Divide and conquer shows up in sexual misery programs too. It interacts and interlaces. So when people are gender confused or unsure or uncertain about gender identity or have some form of gender identity disorder, right? That's in the unconscious scripting. There's no wrongness about it. Never wrongness, simply somewhere where they're not at ease or in harmony or in love or in joy, embracing the truth of who they are, whatever that is. So divide and conquer can play out there because now there's this us against them kind of programming. They don't understand straights don't understand the lesbian community. Straights don't understand the gay community. The gays and the lesbians are at odds, but then they'll come together. That's all divide and conquer. Another divide and conquer tactic is when you pit two countries against each other, or two religions against each other, or within a religion divides itself. We can only marry one, our faith, and none other. And so then they divide and conquer themselves, separate from the rest of the world. This creates misery and suffering, does not create unity and oneness. And so these are scripts of trauma that are playing out in the world, and we don't quite understand them. I'll also reference sexual misery programs in the unconscious again, whether there is a confusion about one's gender. And sexual misery programs could play out as some inappropriate sexual activities. Sexual misery programs can also play out in the exploitation of children for sex, or the exploitation of women for sex. And then when humanity thinks it's normal to see sexual aggression towards women or abuse towards women, or when humanity thinks it's normal to physically violate an innocent child through some religious ritual, for example. I realize these are extreme examples, but they play out in our world and contribute to the pain and suffering that is unnecessary for us. Because this stuff, these traumas, are healable and resolvable. And when I say healable, what I mean is that we no longer carry the trauma, the wounds, the pain, the suffering, because all of that energetic, all of the density is resolved through this spiritual healing that is incredibly effective. And the storyline is cleared and resolved from the DNA. And in so doing, the experience no longer plays out in our lives. So again, these are just a few examples. Divide and conquer is a really common one. Another really common one, obviously, is victimizer, abuser, perpetrator. This can also play out with bullying at school. Children are needlessly bullied. I was bullied for most of my life into my adulthood because I carried that fear of bullies with me unconsciously and consciously, and it played out in my whole family dynamic. I was bullied. So even by my most closest immediate family members. And until I was able to really find that storyline through all the genetics and all the ancestry and all the lineage and resolve it in my own karma and rewrite the script in my own DNA, that followed me. And I had this unconscious fear of humans being very aggressive. And it played out in my life, even in my professional world. And so this is just another example, where we carried this stuff unconsciously, and we really can't change the external world. We have to change the internal world to change our external reality. And so this trauma, again, right now is being amplified and will be amplified through the upcoming Lionsgate portal, which of course is on August 8th and is already open. And the balance of the year will be really, and even into next year, because these North Node and South Node are basically saying, this is what we want you working on. We want you making internal change in the places you are most resistant to change, most blind to your need for change. And we're going to, we, the universe, going to reinforce this on the collective so that you can be free and liberated. That's the karma dharma of those planets, and that's when we're talking about Pluto in retrograde, Saturn in retrograde, and Jupiter in retrograde. That's literally what those planets are asking us to do for the balance of the year and even into next year. So all of these scripts that are examples, sexual misery, the victim-victimizer, the divide and conquer, some really great examples of how our DNA is carrying these storylines where we are, we are basically unconsciously programmed, and we need to make this change so that our world resolves these issues and we are able to live in much more harmony, happiness, and joy, and to improve significantly and dramatically the quality of our lives. So, of course, I do these. I want to reference one other one, and then I'll come back to that. I think I referenced crucifixion implants and the abandonment of God's source creator, however we identify that source, the feeling of being abandonment. This is being abandoned. This is going on in a huge way on Earth right now, where people feel so disempowered. They feel powerless to make change. Their idea of making change is, and has been up until now, to petition or to riot or to write government officials, and they're really now starting to realize that that doesn't work or matter either. And so they feel incredibly disempowered, and very often this comes from some sort of separation from God, or false Santa Claus in the sky, or false sky god. And that's an implant or an energetic script in the DNA. So when we talk about a false sky god, the concept is that this God, there's some kind of God in the sky that we can either trust or not trust, or that we just don't understand. Well, how could it possibly do these things to us? It, he, she. And how could this God source love us if it allows all of this? Well, that's just because these false programs are running in the unconscious through traumas of abandonment, separation from this false sky god, which is not the case, because source creator God and all that is within us, around us, all that is, it is all that is. And this infinite resource is available to us, but we can't be separate from it. So this, of course, traumatizes us to believe or perceive that we're somehow separate from this conditional God, based on conditional love, based on conditional judgment. And so many people isolate themselves by becoming scientists and refusing to believe or perceive that anything that is not scientifically real or valid could ever exist. And so they separate or fractal themselves off from their source, and they become very disempowered that way, and they don't necessarily know it, right? And this has happened to all of us because, of course, we've all had wounds of separation. These are wounds of separation, and they can be, as I said, they can be programs of false sky gods or programs in the unconscious of abandonment of God, abandonment issues. And of course, they are playing out in our reality and causing us great misery and suffering as a result of it. And again, these things can be resolved so quickly, effortlessly, and easily once we start recognizing that these kinds of unconscious traumas, wounds, and scripts can be very easily and very effectively cleared, healed, and resolved with the help and support of the non-physical. And that on these major portal dates, such as the Lionsgate portal, this energy helps us. It's like shedding an old skin, freeing and liberating ourselves from an old pattern or way of being, and then literally stepping into a new way of existing that is so much more energetically supportive of us and of who we really are, where we're going, and what we're and who we're becoming. And so we do this on the Lionsgate and other portals like this. Of course, I want to invite you to join me for the next one, which is this Lionsgate portal, August 8th. And we will be doing the next live DNA activations call where we are clearing out the old DNA, activating new DNA that's more aligned with the future for humanity, which is for the most benevolent best of all with harm to none, and for the 100% positive upliftment of all with harm to none. So, of course, I'd like to invite you to join us. That's this August 8th is the next live one. It's over, you can register over at the website at LoriSpagna.com. Under the live events, you'll see speed activations, DNA activations, sacred key code activations, star code marking activations. We do it all. It's really amazing. It's about a 3 to 4 hour call. The first hour and a half is updates about what's going on for humanity and the current ascension cycle and the different activations, transmissions, and healings that we'll be receiving. And then the second hour and a half, there's a break in there, and then the second hour and a half approximately is the meditation with activations, clearings, healings, etc. And of course, during that time, we're clearing out the core pillar, we're opening up all the major chakras, we're activating third eye, we're accessing theta brainwave, which is a universal brainwave for universal intelligence, telepathy, psychic communication, etc. We all are able to do this. This is not woo-woo. It is not out there. It is real, and it is valid, and it is the most effective way that I know of for clearing out these traumas so that we can transform our experience. Of course, we also always open base chakra, core pillar of all the major chakra centers. Open up, connect in with the earth, and receive this incredible, high vibrational, pure frequency energy, these new transmissions and activations, and we awaken our dormant DNA, which contains, of course, all of our superpowers. So really, that's our greatest gifts to the world and to ourselves and to one another. So I hope you will join me. Again, it's this August 8th. It's the next live one. And you head over to LoriSpagna.com. Under the live events tab, you register on the page that says speed activations, DNA activations, sacred key codes, and star code markings. So many amazing things coming in to help humanity heal and resolve our traumas and our unconscious wounding so that we no longer have to take the past into the future and we never again need to repeat it or perpetuate it, and we can start creating a future and aligning with the future that is really much more joyful and benevolent rather than participating in this collapsing old third dimensional paradigm that has been based on self-implosion, not helping the greater good, just harm and detriment to one another. We just no longer need that. It's not part of where we're going as a future. for the future of humanity. So we clear and resolve these traumas from our unconscious, we clear them out of our DNA, and we activate the new codes that allow us to really experience life as it's meant to be, to remember ourselves as the beautiful divine love that we are, the vibration, the emanation, the frequencies of light, sound, love, joy. That is the truth of who we are. We are all inherently worthy, loving, lovable, and deserving. We all have inherent magnificence to offer, to share, and contribute. And right now on Earth, this is a time, especially for the old paradigm, that is, we are needing this. We need this more than ever to anchor in more of this light, to make this transitional period over the next few years to be more graceful than it has been over the past 3, at least, years. We have a lot more transition to go, and the more of this interchange that we make, the more graceful, easy, and smooth the change ahead will be for ourselves and certainly for everyone on Earth. So I hope you will join me. I'm really looking forward to it. It's always tremendous success and truly transformational. I would love to see you there. So please do head over to LoriSpagna.com under the Live Events tab and join us for the next upcoming Lionsgate Portal Speed Activations Call, Dormant DNA, Sacred Key Codes, and Star Code Marking Activations. And also one other thing, if you would like the entire history, by the way, of all of the activations we've been doing, because they're all always new, always unique, always different. We activate all of these codes. We awaken so much of our dormant potential. So incredible. People are having the most amazing results. You can get the whole history too. That's under the memberships tab. It's a living library. It's always updated, but it has the history, never the live events, but it has the history of the calls through up until March of 2022 at this current point. And it's got hundreds of hours of DNA activations and meditations designed to help you to awaken your dormant potential and to remember how to do it for yourself as well. Meditations and trainings, healings, activations and transmissions to awaken your dormant DNA and to help empower you so that you can reveal to yourself the higher truths of who you are, as well as all of your superhuman abilities, transform your life and the betterment of life on Earth for all of humanity. So for that, for the membership package, you would want to go over to LoriSpagna.com. Under the memberships tab, look for DNA Activations Membership, and you get the full access to the entire history, so incredible, of all our DNA activations, which we've been doing for, I mean, that goes back, I think, to 2015, even though I started doing them in 2008, I think. Yeah, they go back even further than that. But so, okay, I hope that's helpful, you guys. I hope to see you in the Lionsgate portal. It's going to be a magnificent time of a massive evolutionary jump for us once again, as these portals always are, and a fabulous time for real healing of trauma in the unconscious so that we can resolve it and move forward in clearer, purer states, knowing who we truly are, and shifting into the vibratory state of love for the whole of humanity, and 100% positive upliftment, 100% of that which is good, right, fine, and divine for all beings on Earth, because we are all worthy and deserving of that. So I hope to see you there. Head over to LoriSpagna.com to register, and I will see you on the 8/8 Lionsgate. Until then, I love you so much. See you next time. Bye-bye. Farewell.